Hi there. It is time to do some more seed starting. Well, let me preface with this is still about mid-January. I am in central Ohio in the Midwest. So it really is maybe a little early. You wouldn't have to start the seeds that I'm starting today quite this quick, but I'll explain why as we go along. I did not include in this video the process of getting the seed trays filled up with soil. I did that in another recent video, and I will try to link that here if I can. So let's talk about what we're getting ready to do. I have quite a few I can't talk. Geranium seed packets. I've got 2 packets of some perennial geraniums. All the geranium seeds are from a company called Swallowtail. And I really like them if you're looking for some things that are kind of unique and different. Although part of the reason they have some of these things and a lot of the bigger other names don't is because sometimes they're a little bit harder to grow for a home grower. But I will say that the geranium seeds that I did last year they went really well. So anyways, there's kind of 2 main types of geraniums. There's the perennial and then there's annual. I have 2 packets of the same color of some perennial geraniums, and I really like these. They almost once they get going, they can almost act a little bit like a ground cover, but then they also have these sweet little flowers. So I really like them. This is the Vision Light Pink, and then I have all of these are annual geraniums, and within the annual geraniums that they have from Swallowtail, there's some different I don't know if they're different varieties or types. And then within each of those, there are multiple different colors. So I have some that are from the Bullseye variety. I have some Maverick. And then I guess maybe I have Bullseye, Maverick. Maybe that's it. Maybe those are the 2 variety types that I got. They do have some other different annual geranium varieties, but those are the 2 that I kind of liked how they looked. And then I've got lots of different colors. I've got cherry and light pink. There's one called Apple Blossom that is just this very delicate, pale, pinkish color. I have some that are coral, although the coral I noticed actually looked more of like a pink color. It was kind of hard to describe, but it was really pretty. So, and these did really well. And the reason I'm starting these so early, a little bit earlier than really necessary, is I want them to be a little more of an established plant, because these are going in my porch pots. And so I want them to be ready to go out and be hardened as soon as it's safe to do that, and get them acclimated to being outdoors, and then in those porch pots as quick as possible in the late spring. I also have 1 pack of columbine. I really wish I had some other columbine. I think, do some winter sowing containers with some other columbines, I think. But this one's called Leprechaun Gold, and it's very interesting because the foliage is kind of a lighter golden color, and the flowers are these deep purple. Isn't that pretty? It's so pretty. So I want to start some of these early for the same reason. I'm hoping that they'll be a little more established for when I go to plant them in the spring. Then I have several different kinds of echinacea, and again, all the flowers that I'm starting today, it's with the goal to have them be more mature plants. So I know that. So one reason that a lot of people maybe would follow the recommended time to start these seeds indoors is because they don't want to have to pot them up. They don't want to have to move them up into bigger pots. I'm okay with that, because what that's going to get me are the more mature plants that I want before I plant them out. So I have several different kinds of echinacea from several different companies. And so as I'm planting them, I'll try to show you those, but there's several echinacea. Another name for echinacea is coneflower. And in the past couple of years when I've started echinacea, they've all been some different varieties of different colors on purpose, because these are perennials, and I'm trying to expand what I've got in my flower beds without having to buy things at the nursery. It's a lot cheaper. If I can get these all to germinate, I can grow potentially more than a dozen 20 plus echinacea plants, and to pay for even 1 or 2 echinacea plants would be what I've got in seeds and potting mix. So lots of different echinaceas, but I'm also this year going to plant some that's just the standard Echinacea purpurea, which is the purple coneflowers that most people associate with just a standard coneflower. That's the other kind of more common name. But it also can be used for a lot of like herbal things, like I'm not going to say medicinal, but along those lines. If you're getting, and I'm trying to kind of get more into growing some things that I could use for some herbal purposes. And then the other thing I'm starting today is a bunch of onions. I did pretty good with onions last year. I want to grow more, I think, this year than I did last year, but also last year I planted them all over in every different place in the garden, and so some of them did great and some of them didn't really grow because I had them in places where they ended up getting too much shade, and that was part of what I was trying to figure out, was how close could I put them with what other different plants and they would still get what they needed to do well. So this year I'm going to be hopefully able to place the plants in a little bit better strategic places, and I was more attending to which ones are going to store better. So I am still growing some that are not necessarily great for storage, because I also intend to dehydrate some of the onions and then also just enjoy them during the summer. But then I also am going to start seeds for a bunch of the couple 3 different varieties that are supposed to do much better if you want to store them long term, because my goal is to hopefully grow enough onions and store them well enough that I don't have to buy any onions at the grocery store next year. This year's onion crop actually lasted me until about Christmas time. So, but that's only on one person eating them. So now I do still have a few dehydrated ones, but not a ton. So that's the other thing that we're starting today. And let me get my camera set up so that you can see what I'm doing, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I have 2 different size of planting containers that I'm using today. And that's on purpose. I'll explain it as we go. These are from Bootstrap Farmer. I really like these. They're see-through, so I'm hoping that will help with keeping an eye on the health of my seedlings, and also having a better idea of, yes, it's time to pot them up. And I'm using this size for all of the geraniums, the columbines, and the echinaceas, because those are the ones that I know that I will need to pot up. Whereas the onions, I am going to be doing in trays that are like this. They're much larger. These fit 12 in a 10-20 tray, so that's 72 small cells, whereas these are only going to fit 6 of these in a 10-20 tray, so there's only 36. So they are much bigger, not only in their size as a square, but they're also a little deeper. So this is what I'm going to do the onions in, because my intention is to not have to do any uppotting with the onions, even though I'm starting so early here in mid-January, because the onions, this worked at least last year, I will be able to plant several onions in each cell, and they will do just fine growing and developing roots. And then when it's time to plant them, I'll pull it out and it'll be this mass of roots, and then I'll just gently tease them apart and they should do just fine. So let's get started. I'm going to start with the geranium, and we're going to start with the perennial ones. So what I'm going to do is, I've made my tags already. I did this back in my office before I came out here and got all these filled up with dirt. I'm going to just put 1 tag per little tray. Oops. I'm just going to stick it down in one of the cells like that, and then I will plant my seeds. Now the perennial geranium ones only come with 5, a guarantee of 5 seeds per packet. I'm kind of hoping that they'll maybe have 1 extra and I can put one per cell. At least that's what I'm going to hope for. So let's see what we've got here. Now geranium seeds aren't too tiny. You can see them pretty easily, and you always want to check your seed packet to see what it recommends as your planting depth. And this does not say, oh sorry, it does. It says barely cover. So that means we're going to just stick it on here and on top of the soil, and then I'm going to cover it with a thin layer of what's called vermiculite. And vermiculite is a ground up volcanic, I think, rock, some kind of a rock, and it helps by, it absorbs moisture and then also can release it when it gets dry around it. It helps with managing the moisture level, because you want to keep a kind of a fine balance with your seed starting, where your seeds don't dry out, but you also don't want them so wet that they would rot. So let's see what we got here. Yay! There's 6 seeds. All right, so I'm just going to put one per cell. And I can put it right here in the middle. I'm going to do this for both of these. I'll speed it up. Those are done. So now I'm going to start on the annual geraniums. Basically the same process and also the same seed depth. We're going to just barely press them into the soil and cover with some vermiculite. And these say they have 10 seeds per pack. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to put like 2 seeds per cell. And what I'll do is I'll just put them kind of diagonally. That gives them the most space. And then when it's time to pot them up, they should be fairly easy to separate. So I'm going to get going on this. Same process. I'll speed this up again. Makes it way easier to put your seeds in the tray if you get your finger dampened. I'm just touching the potting soil and it's making my finger damp, and then touch the seed, it kind of sticks to your finger, and then you can just place it where you want it. And so I'm doing that, and then I have to be careful to make sure it doesn't come off with me, and then I'm just gently zhuzhing over a little bit of the potting mix to kind of sort of cover the seeds, but I'm not worrying about getting them completely covered because I am going to, like I said, be putting some vermiculite on here in just a minute, and that will take care of, I think, any covering that they need, since it said to basically just have them be on the top of the soil, just pressing into the soil and barely covers what the packet said. And so far, every packet has had 11 seeds, which has been awesome. So since these have 6 cells, I'm putting 2 seeds in 5 of the cells. And oh, now this one finally is one that just has 10 seeds. So that's okay. That's what it said the packet would have. But it was nice on the other ones that I got a bonus seed. And that happens a lot of times. Seeds are very small. They don't weigh very much. So I appreciate the seed companies that err, so to speak, on the side of you getting a little bit extra. So there, all of the seeds are now in the tray. And so now I'm going to take the vermiculite. You just want to make sure you get the coarse kind. A lot of seed companies, companies that sell stuff for seeds, make vermiculite. This happens to be fairy morse. I think I've also used burpee. I can't ever seem to find the Espoma brand, although I think they do make it, or at least they used to. And it is very light. And I literally just put a scoop of it in my hand, turn my hand over, and then just kind of let it sprinkle out. And this should also help. It won't eliminate, but it should also help a little bit with cutting down on algae growing on the top of these while they're under the humidity dome. Like I said, it doesn't eliminate it, but it helps slow it down or minimize it. It should also help a little bit. Same thing, it won't eliminate, but it should help minimize a little bit the potential of the fungus gnats. So I'm going to get this tray done, put a humidity dome over it, and then I'll be moving on to the next tray, and I'll show you that when I get there. Okay, I am ready to start my second flat. In this one, it's going to be more perennial flowers. So the first flat was basically all geraniums. Most of them, the first flat was all geraniums, mostly annual ones. And then just a couple little sections of perennial geraniums. This is going to be all perennials. So let me show you what we're going to do, or what we've got here. It's the same process though. So I've got the columbine, which I mentioned a little earlier. So I'm going to do that in one of these 6 cell trays or containers. And it says in here that there's a minimum of 15 seeds. So what I'm going to try to do is aim for putting 3 seeds in each cell, and 2 or 3, depending on if there's actually 15. Sometimes there's a few more than that. And then we've got some echinaceas. This one's called Allen's Pride. It looks like it's kind of a pale greenish color. This one's from Botanical Interests. I love their packets. They're so pretty, and they have tons and tons of information on them. And then I've got 2 different white varieties from Swallowtail. One is called Powwow White, and the other one is called White Swan. The Powwow tends to be a little bit shorter, so which is nice with a coneflower to have something that you could put a little more in the middle of the bed. I mean, they're still not short. They get up to around 2 feet tall, but the White Swan can get closer to 3 feet tall. So that's something maybe more for further back in a flower bed. And then I've got a big pack of just traditional Echinacea purpurea, which is just like your traditional purple coneflower. These are from Johnny's, and I got a really big pack on purpose because I also want to try just throwing this. I want to try to create a pollinator, like almost like meadow in a section of my property near the woods. And so that's why I got extra seeds of that. And then I've also got a mix called Paradiso Tall mix. That's also from Johnny's. And both of these I also did a container outside with winter sowing. And then from Baker Creek, I also have a Paradiso mix. I don't know if it's the exact same in theory as the one from Johnny's, but it could be. The one from Johnny's doesn't say Oh yeah, it might be the same thing. So we'll see. That's sometimes kind of interesting though to compare companies to see how things work. And then this is also from Baker Creek called Paradoxa, and it's gonna be a little more like kind of like a black-eyed Susan look, but it's a coneflower. And it's a native plant to the Ozarks. So I'm trying to, with a lot of these, my hope is to actually create kind of like a wild flower pollinator space. So we'll see. Also put a few in the flower beds. So the process is essentially the same. I'm going to read my packets to see how deep to plant these. The Columbine says 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch deep. So that's not very deep. 1/4 of an inch is maybe, I don't know if you can see that, like not very deep. So I'm just going to take my garden marker and I'm going to just kind of rough up the soil mixture here, the potting mix. And I'm just going to kind of like loosen it up, and then I will place the seeds and then just kind of cover them up with the potting mix that I loosened up. And then we'll cover everything with some vermiculite. And if I recall, let me check the echinaceas. Yes, they also want to be about 1/4 of an inch deep. So I'm going to basically do this same process just over and over again as I go through the tray. So I'll share that with you as I do it, but we're not going to do it in real time. We're going to speed this up. Okay, so for the traditional Echinacea purpurea, the standard purple coneflower, since I have so many seeds, for this one, I'm going to kind of just clear out a space in the center of the cells here, and I'm going to try to spread them out a little bit, but I'm going to like put 4 or 5 seeds in there, because I want to make sure that I get at least maybe 3 or 4 plants per cell. And then I will be able, these cells are rather small, so I will be potting these up into bigger containers. So really for the Echinacea, these containers are just more of a germination, like a round, and then they'll get moved up into bigger containers, and at that point I'll separate them. And I should be able to do that before these get with their roots too entangled. So I'm going to just kind of sprinkle 4 or 5 seeds here, and then kind of cover it over loosely a little bit and tamp it down. And that way, hopefully I will get several seedlings from each one of these cells, and that can hopefully be separated, or possibly sometimes when you buy things that are nursery, there's 2 or 3 plants in there. Sometimes I'll do that on purpose, where I will look for, if I'm buying something from a nursery because it's not something I can easily grow from seed myself, there's a lot of things where I have, like daylilies, for example, where I will buy the one that looks like it's got 2 or 3 plants in it, and I'll take it home and I'll cut them apart and split them. So if I end up with some of these that have multiple plants in them, as long as I get it down to a couple when I pot them up, it should be okay. As long as I put them in big enough containers. Perennials are done. Now it's time for onions. basically it's the same process, although with onions, I am going to try two different things. I was watching a video where the guy said he actually, when he went to plant his onions, he left them kind of clustered together, and it looked like there were 4 or 5 onions in one cell, and he just picked that up and he planted it as is. He did not separate those onions. And he said, and it's fine, because as they grow, once they get to the point where they start to form their bulbs, those bulbs will just kind of like push away from each other, but the roots stay fine in the soil. He said the main thing is you just get would get more of a medium-sized bulb, as opposed to if you're trying to grow some really big onions, that you probably won't get, but you will still get decent sized onions. So I'm going to try that, because a lot of times I only need maybe half of an onion, so it wouldn't be a horrible thing to get some medium sized onions, and it would potentially allow me to maximize my growing space and grow more onions in a smaller footprint in the garden. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to do a couple of these cell packs with being more careful to put just 4 onions per cell, and then in other ones I'm going to just kind of go to town and sprinkle a whole bunch. For the most part, they all want to be about 1/4 inch deep, so I will just sort of make space here using the end of my marker and drop the seeds in, and then we'll see what happens. All right, here we go. These are the ones that I'm going to try to be more careful about doing in clusters. So let me see if I can show you. Zoom in. So I'm just using my end of my marker here, and I'm trying to make 4 kind of little holes, indentations really, and kind of loosening up the soil so that I can drop the little seeds in there. The seeds are not very big. These do have a little bit of a coating on them. I don't think they're pelleted per se, they just have some kind of a little coating to make it easier to see them. So it's not like a chemical treatment, it's just a little bit of a coloring. So you can see they're not very big, and they're normally black. So having that little bit of a coating on there is going to make it easier to see them, and I'm going to try very carefully to put 1 per hole, because this is my experiment where I'm going to try planting them as a group. So I'm putting 1 per hole, and I'm going to do 2 6-packs like this. So if this works, and I get 4 onions from each of these cells, that's a good amount of onions just for those 2. And then in the other cell packs, I am just pulling back the top layer of the potting mix. Technically it's a seed starting mix, and sprinkling in, I don't even know how many seeds, a bunch. And what that'll do is it's going to allow for, in case some of the seeds don't germinate in those cells, it won't be an issue. There'll be plenty, hopefully, that will. And they'll separate just fine when it's time to plant them. So there we go. In this one here, I now have 4 basically in each of the little cells. I'm going to do the same thing in this next one. Right here. And then this variety is called Patterson, and from my research, it is one that should store very well. It's a yellow onion, and so I am actually going to do, that's why I'm doing so many of these. I'm doing 2 cell packs of 4 onions per cell to try and plant as a cluster, and then I'm also going to do another cell pack of 6 where I'm going to do the thing where I'm going to just pull and kind of loosen up the soil, and then just dribble in a bunch of seeds. Let me get this going faster. So you can see I just dropped a whole bunch of seeds in there, and I may even put more in the next one. All right, I'm going to keep going with this with the rest of my onions, and I'll give you a quick look once we get them all covered up with vermiculite, get the covers on there, and put them on the shelf. Okay, everybody's planted and all tucked in. The lights have gone off, but you can see everybody has a humidity dome covering them. That'll help keep a consistent moisture level in there. And I'll come back to show them to you, hopefully in a few days or a couple of weeks once things have started sprouting. Thanks for joining me here in Aunt Susan's garden.